Welcome to the Osmo Early Bird Podcast. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on a Saturday morning with one Adam Ship My Money Share. As we record the podcast, of course, on Friday night, it is your first look foundational podcast, courtesy of Osmo.com. Adam, we're in the midst of the early game, so we don't have a full return yet on Boban. What was your take in the half hour leading up to, we know there's a change in the lineup, but there was no confirmation that Boban was starting until about 11 or 12 minutes prior to lock, and this was the first game that locked Friday night. As you were building your vaunted 150 construction, what was going through your mind? How much to have before you knew he was starting?
I was going back and forth between like 60 and 80% before it was confirmed, just because as soon as we got news that Gortat probably wasn't going to play, I kind of assumed it would be Boban anyway. But even if it wasn't, like at $3,800, he doesn't have to do much at all to, put you in a good spot, and he certainly can just end the slate if you don't have him. So him starting, it was more just like reassurance. But I was going to jam him in pretty much everywhere anyway.
All right, I was just curious. Oh, and while I'm looking at it, I've got my Yahoo pricing up, so I better fix these filters here. Shout out to Yahoo. Boban was 12% over there. It looked like in the tournaments I was in. He was the lower owned or low on less rosters. The lower the price points were, and his popularity increased as the roster prices increased, and in the single entry stuff, he was pretty high as well. What was the over on DraftKings? What was the highest you've seen him thus far in any of the tournaments you've been perusing?
I haven't looked at anything that I wasn't in, but in the 153 max, he's up to 51%.
Okay, so it's one of those that if you've been around for a long time, you know his upside. On the flip side, back-to-back, they were going from Philly down to Florida, in Orlando, etc. So it was just interesting to see how much he's going to get. So we're not into the second half just yet there, so we'll know more. But that's a fun one to look at because he's quite a polarizing play. Let's go game by game here. Reminder, if you use the promo code EARLYBIRD, you get 1 free week of all Osmo premium content. That includes multiple projection sources for all of the main sports going on right now. The multiple would be for the NBA. You get Fast Eddie Fair's cash game and GPP report card rankings. You get Osmo's report card rankings for value and productivity. You get for all sports. Eddie's are just for NBA. You get Josh Engelman's projections. You get the FanVice projections run by Andrew Barron, also known as Hot Magic, and then all sorts of football content. Lots of good stuff going on at Osmo.com. Promo code EARLYBIRD, all one word, no space. Adam, as we go in here, we have 7 games, well, technically 8 games on Saturday, but there is a 1 o'clock game with the Detroit Pistons taking on the Philadelphia 76ers. That will be kind of a fun one to see Andre Drummond and Joel Embiid go toe-to-toe, but we're not going to include that in our analysis because that game is really only being utilized as a single game contest on the larger site. So you guys want to catch us in Slack chat. That'll be behind the paywall, premium style, another feature over at Osmo.com. We'll give you our thoughts there, and there will be rankings and projections for that game as well. But we're looking at just 3 over-unders are available to us at this point. Boston at Indiana. Boston road favorite by 2.5. It's a 207 over-under. We have Cleveland at Charlotte. This is shocking. Remember, LeBron's not in Cleveland anymore. Charlotte, double-digit home favorite, just barely, 226 over-under. And then the last game of the night, the Lakers at Portland. We have Portland by 3, 238 over-under. We're missing the over-unders for Miami and Atlanta, for Houston and Chicago. Those 2 teams are playing this evening. For New Orleans and the Spurs, we, of course, don't know what's going on with Anthony Davis. And then Utah and Denver. Utah is playing tonight. Plus, Donovan Mitchell may be back on Saturday. He sat out Friday. We'll know more in the morning. I kind of think he'll probably get one more game off. And then for the Houston-Chicago game, James Harden probable to play, but of course this is the night before and they aren't going to take too many risks with him. Let's go position by position, Adam. Point guards, I've been talking a bunch. Kemba Walker, our favorite, is there. Take her away.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a really good spot for Kemba. He's disappointed each of his last 2 games against Miami, and in his most recent game against, I'm completely blanking on who he played, but Oklahoma City. But, obviously a much better matchup here against Cleveland, one of the worst defenses, if not the worst defense in the entire NBA. The only, real concern is what you mentioned, the potential of a blowout here in Charlotte, but that's not something that I'm going to, factor into my projections. It's something that I'll keep in mind as I'm figuring out, ownership exposures, but it's a great spot for Kemba. Still, 30+% usage, 30+% assist percentage, even going back to last season without Dwight Howard on the floor. So really good spot for him, and also a good spot for, a little bit more expensive, but Dame Lillard against the Lakers in, a huge pace up game should be able to get outrun, and it's a good spot for him. His price tag's gotten a bit elevated, but it is a spot where, I really like him, and the top of the point guard position isn't really that deep today, with Lillard really being the most expensive true point guard.
All right. Looking on down the list here to see who else is there. We have Kyrie Irving coming off a 50-burger. Tougher matchup there against Indiana. Well, tougher if you think their guards are going to slow him down at all. But he is no mere mortal. He should be in a decent spot at 8,000. We have Drew Holiday. His mileage may vary. It will depend kind of how you want to project him, if Elfrid Payton is back, if Anthony Davis is back, but he's definitely someone to consider because this is not the same San Antonio Spurs. They are down to fumes, I guess, would be the way to say it. They still have Aldridge. They still have Rudy Gay, but they are missing some key components. DeMar DeRozan, not the toughest defender, but we're going to talk about him in a second. The assists, Adam, I did not see that coming, even with all of the missing point guards there for the Spurs. What do you think here about potentially Rondo going against Portland? We've also got Colin Sexton going against Kemba. Is that going to be something where he picks up some ticky-tack fouls, not used to the big NBA speed of stuff? What are you looking at down here kind of in the bargain range without any screaming value just yet, because we don't have a lot of confirmed news?
Yeah, I mean, not really a ton to like down here yet, at least, without news. Rondo, the minutes are going to fluctuate, but if he ends up on, the good half of the timeshare with Lonzo at point guard, then there is some value there, but it's not something that you can really do all that confidently. Sexton, we're still seeing, split minutes with George Hill. So that's tough. Donovan Mitchell, I believe, is questionable for this one. Obviously missed last night's game. If he misses, then I think going right back to Dante Exum, unless something weird happens rotation-wise and, Exum doesn't get all the minutes that we expected him to. Going back to Exum, if Mitchell's out, will be the clear value play there.
All right, here's the guy that I targeted him. It is Jeremy Lin. I saw that he had popped a little bit to the night before Halloween. He was going against Cleveland, had just over 20 minutes, and had put up 27 DraftKings points. And I knew this is something that you had talked about on the strategy show a couple times with Josh, saying that when he ever does start to get in the lineup and playing a little bit more and being able to play next to Trae Young more often, he's going to be super duper underpriced. So I made sure to get him on 20% of my lineups. Yes, I'm actually playing somewhere between 120 and 150 lineups a day. I too have joined this mass multi-entry thing, still getting the hang of it, because sometimes I'll think, let me see how much of this player I have. Oh, I don't have any. I'm learning how to spread out the old portfolio, as the kids call it. But Jeremy Lin was someone I goosed his price a little bit, or his production, capped him at 20%, was very happy. In the second half, he kind of came through there, almost 29 DraftKings points. He's still 3,800. Now he has back-to-back games where he has played at least 23 minutes, 19 in 3 of the last 4. Miami's playing a little bit more up-tempo. Is this a spot you would consider him as a placeholder for now? Because I think he could be a little bit off the radar.
I think that's a really good point for tournaments. It's still not something that I would feel super confident about, especially because a portion of those minutes have come in, basically garbage time. But it is the second game in a row that he's played minutes alongside Trae Young, which is nice to see. We saw about 6 minutes alongside Young in that game against Cleveland. that's something that, we expected to happen earlier than now even, but certainly to start happening by the end of the season. So definitely, with him still being really cheap, you want, especially if you're a max entry guy and you can afford to, make some Jeremy Lin lineups without it tanking your entire night if he underperforms, you want to be ahead of the curve on him getting more minutes because he is so productive when he plays. So yeah, I think that's a really good call for tournaments.
And the other bonus is he's also shooting guard eligible. So one of the reasons we like some of these cheaper guys is as you tip the scale to get a few of them in your lineup, it frees up the salary cap. And then if you're utilizing an optimizer such as Fantasy Crunchers or one of the other options out there, you're able to get some of the, quote, top-end plays, the higher-priced guys, because then you have extra salary cap, and it'll look to put in those guys because their point per dollar becomes a little bit more appealing. So it's one of those where if you're doing it for a reason, and I think looking at it to see what else it can get in your lineups, it's something that's worthwhile. If I was hand building, I don't know, just a couple lineups, I don't know that I'd put Lin in, but I'll probably have close to 150 again. So I'm sure I will make it a note to get him in on about 20% of the lineups. And that's one of the other things we'll talk a lot about on Saturdays. We've launched the Saturday DFS strategy show that is Adam and I. We'll go game by game. We get a little bit more of a leisurely pace. I don't know, Adam, if we'll challenge the near 2 hours you and Josh seem to do.
Yeah, I don't have time for that on Saturdays. Got to write the article too.
You got to write the article. So we'll be closer to an hour and 15 tops because I don't want to take away from your day. But we'll have more time to look at this stuff. We'll be able to explain a few things of what we're doing and what it's a balloon. So when you squeeze the balloon in one spot, another spot's going to pop out. But we have a little bit more time to talk through that and strategies. And then you can come up with a couple different paths or game plans as news breaks in that last crazy 30 minutes of the NBA. You'll have a couple different scenarios you can be prepared for and let your automated helpers do the work for you. Or even if you're doing 5 or 6 lineups by hand, you can have a couple different strategies. But on to the 2-guard here officially. Zach LaVine, quite interesting as always. DeMar DeRozan, talked about him. I love this matchup for him going against New Orleans, regardless of the status for Anthony Davis, because somehow the Spurs are in the top half of the Western Conference. Now, it's super duper early, and all it's going to take is a 3-game losing streak, and they're going to come way back to the pack. But they are, if the playoffs ended today after, 8 games, they would be a home court playoff team. Talk to me about DeMar DeRozan. Did you see the assists going up as much as they have thus far? He's averaging 28 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 7.3 assists per game.
They had talked in the offseason about him being more involved in the assist department. I also, so I don't think it's surprising that he's picking up more of them. I do think he's running really good right now in terms of assists. I have him as one of the players most due for regression in terms of his assist percentage. I have his actual assist percentage is about 8 percentage points higher than his expected assist percentage. And so I have that coming down a little bit. But still, I have his expected assist percentage at about 25%. So still very healthy and productive, especially when you're talking about someone with also a 30% usage rate. The issue normally for me would be that his price is already, pretty expensive. He's up to $9,400 on DraftKings. But on this slate in particular, especially, we're waiting on Donovan Mitchell news, but the kind of upper mid-range of the shooting guard position isn't that strong. So it might be a little bit easier to get him than normal. Like Donovan Mitchell, if he's out, it would just kind of leave you with Drew Holiday at 7,900, LaVine at 7,800, Oladipo in a really tough matchup against Boston. It's not as deep as we've been seeing lately, and I think that would make it a little bit more palatable, but I still think the price is just too expensive.
All right, another guy that we don't know what his results are going to be after Friday night, but it's Eric Gordon. So the 3 games coming into Friday night, he's shooting 22% from the field, 15% from three-point range. Now, we know that that's going to regress to more of his career norms. We also saw what happened with massive regression. Now, he's no Klay Thompson, but we could see a big game from him. He's at 59. The one thing I kind of like about him on DraftKings is he does now have the shooting guard small forward flexibility. So that means you can fit him into 5 different slots on your lineup. So he's almost truly positionless because you can't play him at point guard, you can't play him at power forward, and you can't play him at center. But anywhere else, he slots in there for you. I like him. Bazemore is someone I always keep an eye on, particularly for tournaments, because he does have flashes where he can go above 40 fantasy points. 5,800 against Miami. I'm a little bit on the fence there. And then the cheapy guys, I'm curious. What do you think about Bryn Forbes down here at 4,300? He's flirting with 20 fantasy points most games. I'm just calling that out because last year, 2 years ago, we'd be excited about him. We'd be talking about him as a value, as a discount option. I don't know that he has the ceiling at 4,300 these days in today's NBA.
No, Bryn Forbes sucks. Don't play Bryn Forbes. Play Cameron Payne for 3,900 if you need a punt down there. Play Jordan Clarkson for 4,500. Either one of those guys I think are just much, much, much better plays than Forbes is. And also don't forget, like, James Harden's due back for this game. He's coming off of a full practice, sat out Friday night's game, but he's expected back for this game in a really good matchup against Chicago. So I think that, Harden up at the top is a really good play as well.
Thank you. Excellent point. I had filtered out the injured players on my list. So there we are. All right. That's why you got to do this in pairs so you don't miss anything obvious. Some of these prices, they do look a little crazy. They're really not. I don't think, and it goes with the matchups. Josh Richardson seems, for those of you who have been playing the last couple of years, at 7,200, it feels like we're being asked to give an arm and a leg. I don't think it's too bad of a spot here against Atlanta. Talk to me about Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, I think it's a really good spot against Atlanta. It's a huge pace-up spot, for against an Atlanta team that plays really fast. They've struggled in transition this year. Richardson, he's going to play a ton of minutes. The price tag isn't super appealing. That's the only thing. I mean, you have him priced nearly the same as Zach LaVine, Drew Holiday. He's more expensive than CJ McCollum against the Lakers. So the price tag isn't great, but he certainly can get you 40 plus in the spot.
All right, last guy I have, and we'll use him as a springboard to get over there to small forward. It is Gordon Hayward, 5,200 here on DK, shooting guard, small forward eligibility. We had mentioned him a couple times. I was saying, how cheap does he have to get before we want to play him? And that was when he was 4,800. He did have a season-high 18 points, a season-high 5 assists, ended up with 33 DraftKings points. Relatively solid. He has been in the mid-20s for minutes. That's kind of ticking up just a little bit. No guarantees that continue incrementally, but I think we'll see within 2 weeks he'll probably be back to flirting with 28, 29 minutes regularly per game. Any interest in him going against Indiana with Indiana played them. They're on the back-to-back, Indiana is.
Yeah, not really. I mean, still just not playing enough minutes for me to be that interested. He is obviously a good player, and he can be efficient and score, but I just don't really see the need to go there.
All right. Luke Walton has been called out by Magic Johnson. We don't know if the rest of the front office feels the same way towards him. If you were Luke Walton, what are you doing differently with LeBron and the cast of characters that you have assembled around him as we go against Portland?
I didn't see what Magic said. So
he said we need to get back to the winning way. I'm paraphrasing. We need to get back to the winning ways that are expected of the Lakers.
Yeah. I mean, I think that expecting them not to get out of the gate slow was probably pretty naive. I mean, even when LeBron was going to Miami and teaming up with Wade and Bosh, it took a while, and everyone was losing their minds because they got off to a slow start. Now you have him here with a team of guys that don't really mesh that well with him, like with his style of play, and it's new teammates getting adjusted to each other anyway. You had the guys suspended for 3 and 4 games as well, so I don't really think much will change. I don't think much really should change at this point. Like I just think it's still too early to be concerned about it.
All right, this is courtesy of the LA Times. It's Tanya Ganguli and Broderick Turner. This is it says, frustrated by the rocky start to the season, Magic met with Lakers coach Luke Walton on Tuesday. With the Lakers sitting at 2-2, he was in a rage. Johnson shouted and cursed at Walton, according to multiple sources. Wait for it, I love this. Multiple sources who weren't authorized to speak publicly. So off the record, he asked Walton what he was doing with the team, wanting to see an offensive system in place that he had not yet implemented. At one point, he chided Walton for interrupting him. Perhaps Magic is just lighting a fire. I think Walton is a reasonably good young coach. I think he learned in a good spot there with the Golden State organization, and I think he'll be all right. But there is a lot of pressure and bright lights from Showtime, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean, it's been a fun team to watch. It's just they need to play better.
All right. So knowing that, where are you ranking Mr. LeBron James, the king, amongst our top options? Let's assume Anthony Davis plays. He's 11-5. James Harden is at 11, and LeBron's right in between them at 11-3. So very, very close grouping there. Talk about your rankings of those guys.
I think I would go, assuming he plays, I think I would go Davis, LeBron, Harden. LeBron and Harden would be really close. Davis, I just prefer over both of them because, he runs the show in New Orleans as long as he's, healthy. So you have the injury risk. He is playing through the elbow sprain. But I think that it's a nice spot against San Antonio, and I just think that Davis is a better fantasy producer given his current team and his current situation than LeBron or Harden will be. So I like Davis the most, but then, LeBron, not a great matchup against Portland, but at the same time, he's also matchup proof. He's going to play big minutes. At some point he's probably going to turn it on a little bit, but he's been productive, even as is. So certainly no issue with LeBron here.
All right. Now we have the reason I kind of wanted to highlight those top guys. We're not really going to be able to discern what's going on here with the mid tier because they are so closely priced. We've got about 25 options between the mid sixes and the low fives, and they're all pretty viable. So we're going to need to parse things out. We're going to need to figure out what are matchups, is anybody out, what's changing, etc. Are there any injuries for the handful of teams that are going to be playing back-to-back between Friday and Saturday? So I didn't want to spend a ton of time here just because there are too many variables. But the one guy I do like, and he will be in my placeholder lineup, is going to be Al-Farouq Aminu at 5,100. I like him. Solid matchup there against the Lakers. Plenty of front court guys he can guard. The other person I'm really curious for your thoughts on is Sam Dekker, getting a bunch of minutes because of the various injuries there in Cleveland, particularly with Kevin Love, who's had surgery today on his toe and will be out 6 weeks. So talk to me about Dekker. What do you think about Aminu or anybody else, one or two that just pop in this level?
Yeah, I mean, Aminu's price is just way too cheap. We saw it the other day, and I don't see him on my – oh, there he is. Yeah. He jumped up to 5,100. Like, he was way too cheap at 4K. This is still a good spot for him against the Lakers in a pace-up spot. So I still think he is too cheap, but it's not as egregious as he was at $4,000. Sam Dekker, it's pretty tough to get excited about him at 4,800. The minutes, obviously have increased with J.R. Smith getting kicked out of the rotation, with Kevin Love out of the lineup, but it's not a great matchup against Charlotte. He's still not a particularly good basketball player either, especially for fantasy purposes on a per minute basis. So I would prefer Aminu to Dekker.
All right, moving along to power forward here. You've already kind of given your thoughts on Anthony Davis, LeBron James, but we've got three guys from the same game here. We have LaMarcus Aldridge at 8,300, and Nikolai Mirotic at 8,200, and Julius Randle at 6,900. Considering there's Rudy Gay there as well, 4 in a row from this game. Assuming that Anthony Davis plays and that Randle continues to play his minutes, even though he's been dealing with the sore foot with the plantar fascia injury, where do you like amongst these four?
If Davis plays, it obviously downgrades Mirotic and Randle both, but especially Randle, because it'll be tougher for him to get as many minutes as you need for him to pay off a $6,900 price tag. If Davis sits, I like Randle because the Spurs have been bad defensively. They have really struggled in transition. I like Randle in spots that he can kind of facilitate a little bit more in transition after he rebounds. So if Davis is out, I like Randle. If Davis is in, I can't really get to Randle. And the Mirotic's price, I mean, the usage has been phenomenal this season, but it should take a hit if Davis comes back, and you just have this price tag flying up. So if Davis is back, it'll take a lot of. I won't really be that interested in either of the other two Pelicans forwards.
All right, just kind of looking at some of the discounted value. We do have Paul Millsap. He is at 5,700. Never overly exciting, but decent matchup. He'll be going against a big front court. They're going to need him for Denver as they host Utah. One thing to remember, Utah is, while not as at the same elevation as Denver, they are the second highest city for the NBA, so they don't seem to be as affected quite as much as some of these coastal teams coming from sea level and then going up to Denver to play a game. So just keep that one in mind. They're one of the teams that don't quite succumb to that as much. But Millsap, Kelly Olynyk going against Atlanta, Marcus Morris. Anything intriguing here, or shall we head to the pivot position?
Yeah, nothing really that stands out. Larry Nance in tournaments, again, he's not getting minutes at the power forward position, but everyone has finally figured that out. So he's not owned in tournaments anymore. He dropped about $1,000 in price on DraftKings. There's still monster upside for him because if something weird happens or he just plays really well or whatever, there's still a path to him getting, 26 minutes at center and Thompson getting 22. So, and he's just such a productive player when he's on the floor that as long as people are not going to roster him, then it does make for an appealing play. Again, if you're max entering tournaments, not someone that you would play in a single entry or a 3 max.
Last 4 games for Nikola Jokic going against Rudy Gobert. Now, these stretch all the way back to 2016 because these guys had been injured at various points in time. So they didn't cross over as much. But 2016 in November, 28 fantasy points, 24 just a couple days later and a home and home. And then in January of last year, 55, that's a good one. But then 31 later on at the end of the year. Not enough of a sample size. Both these guys' games have changed dramatically here. Do you like either one of these guys going against their opposite number?
Not really. They're both just kind of at a price that I'm low. I mean, there's upside for Jokic at 9K. It's just such it's a slow matchup. It's a good defensive team. So I don't mind Jokic, but there's still just cheap upside at center, and it makes it tough to really pay up there.
Yeah, and Gobert coming back in those games, reaching back to the farthest one, 20 DraftKings points, 39 DraftKings points, 24 and 32. So no real eye-popping numbers amongst those guys. But we do have some other interesting people. Hassan Whiteside going against Alex Len or Dwayne Dedmon. That feels like a good spot. He is all the way up to 8,000 now. We are going to need a double-double with some blocks to make us happy. We have JaVale McGee. Yes, that JaVale McGee, the Shaqtin' the Fool, the he's so JaVale from the Deadspin articles and memes. Wow, Adam, that's all I can really say is wow. He has only been under 30 fantasy points twice this season. He's averaging just shy of 35 fantasy points. Real stats are 15.5 points per game, 7.5 boards per game. He is up at 6,400. That feels a little bit dangerous. We have Yusuf Nurkic at the same price point. I think I would trust Nurkic more in this one. And then we get Al Horford in a nice matchup going against the less than stellar interior defense of Mr. Sabonis and Mr. Miles Turner. What do you like amongst that trio?
I like both of the centers in the Lakers game. McGee's just locked in the really steady minutes here, and he apparently had asthma issues when he was with Golden State. He's changed his diet, and it doesn't affect him anymore, apparently. He's playing 30-plus minutes a night now. He's still ultra productive. He's even improved defensively, figuring out, where he's actually supposed to be on the defensive end, and that makes it easier to keep him on the floor as well. So I think that there's a part of probably everyone that is just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop on McGee and him to, be inconsistent or do something stupid or whatever. But there's really no reason not to like him in his new role. And then Nurkic obviously comes with the risk of his minutes are volatile. He has a good backup behind him in Zach Collins, who is capable at times of playing so well that Nurkic loses minutes. But it's still a really nice spot in a pace-up matchup for Nurkic. He's pretty much always under-owned in tournaments because people are scared to play him or because people project his minutes to like an average instead of to the 30 or 32 that he plays when things go right. And so he's always one of my favorite tournament plays, and this is no exception.
All right, we'll have to wait and see what cheapies come up. A couple guys that you might want to keep an eye on early. Miles Turner, relatively inexpensive at 5,300, but he's been a bit of a disappointment this season. He's averaging 11 and 5. That's not very exciting. Cody Zeller, he's getting about 20 fantasy points per game like clockwork. Again, that's kind of disappointing in the 2018 version of daily fantasy basketball. Aaron Baines potentially could do some stuff, but you're really counting on things going awry for one of the other front court guys or him lucking into some blocks, which he usually does not get very many. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for him to get over 20 fantasy points. Amongst our little bargain bin options here, anybody popping out, perhaps a Pau Gasol?
Dwayne Dedmon actually is the one that I'm most interested in. He's really let me down a couple games in a row, but it's been completely due to foul trouble. He's gotten in foul trouble early and never really gotten out of it in either game. And so we've seen him barely play, but the price tag just keeps free falling. His ownership will go down along with it. And at $4,300, I'm going to just keep playing Dwayne Dedmon, knowing that if he can stay out of foul trouble, he's going to play, 24, 26, 28 minutes.
All right, that is going to do it for us. We'll kind of wrap up here. Reminder, promo code EARLYBIRD will get you 1 free week of all Awesemo premium content. That includes Slack. It includes the Fantasy Cruncher add-on. It includes all of the projections for all the sports, plenty and plenty of premium articles. For those of you feeling a little thrifty, there will again be the free articles for the primetime NFL slate written by yours truly. We will have the Sunday night game article. That'll be posted Saturday afternoon, and then we'll have the Monday night football article posted at some point Sunday evening. So check back and you can have some fun. With that, we have some intriguing games coming up here. We've got Tom Brady and Aaron Gordon. Good God, now I'm thinking basketball with Aaron Rodgers. That's going to be an exciting game. Two defenses that can be torched by two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Should be a good one. Follow us on Twitter. You can get Adam at ShipMyMoneyDFS. I am EMAC DFS, and then you can get the Awesemo account. It's at Awesemo_COM. That's, think of Awesemo.com, but it's Twitter, so there's no dot. It's the underscore. So Awesemo_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.